Before you turn in your Uncle Ben letters today, we're going to do some peer editing. What you'll be doing is trading your letter with some other members of the class, and I'll explain that in a few minutes. When you get a person's paper, here's what you are going to be looking for. And remember, you should have a colored pen or pencil. It should be different colored than the other people in your row. That way, when you get your paper back, everyone should have done their edits in different colors so you'll know which person did which edit. All right, so they should have that greeting sentence in their letter, and it should be something positive or exciting about Uncle Ben's achievements. So I talked a little bit yesterday. I gave you some examples of things that you could say. So make sure the person started off their letter with something positive for Uncle Ben. Otherwise, he might just get grumpy right away and toss the letter. And then make sure somewhere, and it's okay if this is not in this order, but they should somehow have at least one or two sentences. It's okay if they have more. But they need to talk about how air pressure changes as you get higher on the mountain and how that change makes the amount of oxygen become different. They should also have one or two sentences that explain the health risks that not having much oxygen can lead to. And that was what the bulk of the article was about that you guys read. So again, it's okay if they have more than two sentences, but there definitely needs to be a separate place explaining air pressure and oxygen, and a different area that explains the health risks and problems. They should then have one final little plea to Uncle Ben, reminding him, hey, family's important, whatever. But you want to end it on a positive note because you've just kind of ruined all of his dreams by telling him what could happen to him and that you don't want him to do this climb without an oxygen tank. And then make sure they have signed it with their name. You don't need a last name. Again, Uncle Ben is your uncle, so he probably knows your last name. And this letter can be very conversational. It's an informal letter to your Uncle Ben, who you love very, very much. So it's a different tone than you would write a letter to, say, Dr. Leidy, trying to convince him that you don't think homework should be legal in the school. In addition to making sure all of those items are present, check for spelling, grammar, capitalization, punctuation. So you don't need to fix the spelling or whatever errors you see, but you can just circle it. So use your colored pen or pencil and just circle. If a word is spelled wrong, you can circle it. If something doesn't make sense, you can circle it. If you need to write any comments as to why you circled something, please go ahead and do that. And feel free, if something doesn't make sense, you can just write, this is confusing. Just keep any comments that you write on there constructive. Don't be mean, of course, because those comments are going to stay there when you turn in your paper. So I'm going to give you just a minute to get organized. Make sure you have a pen or pencil that is a color different from your row. At this point, I need any of you who have not finished your Uncle Ben letters to go back to the lab table and work on it. Your teacher's going to come and stamp any of those that are incomplete so that I know when I collect them that you did not have your homework done on time. And you can go ahead and pause this while you get all of that organized and come back to me when you are ready for me to explain how to pass your papers. Okay, so hopefully at this point you are ready to go. Everyone has what they need. The way we're going to do this is we're going to pass our paper. Now, of course, the people who are back at the lab tables finishing are not part of your row anymore. So you're going to pass your paper to the person who sits behind you, directly behind you. And if you are the back person in the row, you're going to take your paper up to the front person in your row. Now, if there's too many people missing from your row, you may have to flip-flop with some other people. Just make sure you don't have your own paper. And once it's time to start, you are going to read through the person's letter. Make any corrections that you need to, or comments, or circle things. If they're missing something from that other slide, you can, here, that slide. So if they're missing something from here, write that it's missing. Right? Hey, you're missing your positive congratulatory sentence, or you didn't talk about how air pressure changes. So you could just make notes of those things that are missing. You're going to have about 4 or 5 minutes to do this. If you get done early, just sit there quietly until the teacher tells you it's time. And then you're going to be switching again in the same manner. So once your time is up on the paper that you have first, you'll be then passing them to the person behind you. Back person will take it to the front, and it'll continue in that pattern until about 3 or 4 other people have seen it. It depends how long it takes. Period 2, you're already a small class, and if there's a lot of people who aren't done, your teacher might direct you to trade with someone else. So just as long as you don't end up with your own or with someone that you've already read before, it really doesn't matter. Once you are finished this entire process, you're going to be given, you'll get your paper back. You'll be given a couple minutes to read through the comments. If there's something that you're not sure about, you can find the person with that color pen or pencil and ask them what they meant, or maybe to clarify something. And then you can make any changes you want to make. You can add anything you need to add to it. And when you feel good about your letter and that you think it's the best it will be, you can go ahead and turn those in. So you'll get about a few minutes to do that. You don't get 20 minutes to make changes, because we do have other things to do today. So that is it. Go ahead and pause this again. And once this whole peer editing process is complete and you've turned in your letters, the entire assignment, then you can play me again, and I'm going to give you some instructions on how to use a balance. Oh yeah, and those of you who are in the back, not having your work done, if you get done while the peer editing is still going on, you can have a seat, and the next time everyone passes their papers to a new person, you can fill in and pass yours. You may not get as many people to peer edit as the others, or you may not get any. Either way, I would still like you to turn it in today. So, all right, so go ahead and pause me and come back to me once you have finished the peer editing, and I'll show you how to use a balance. The next thing we're going to do today is learn how to use a triple beam balance. Remember, it's triple beam balance, not a triple balance beam, which is an extreme gymnastics sport that I invented. All right, so it's called a balance because the idea is to get it to balance, be even on both sides. If you look at it, we've got over here is the little 0 and the pointer. When the pointer points to 0, it means it's balanced. We have this metal part up here, we call it the pan. That's where you set the object that you're going to find the mass of. And then we've got these 3 beams in the middle, hence the name triple beam balance. Each beam has numbers on it and has this little slidey thing, which is called a rider. So, and you might sometimes hear people call them sliders. So the sliders or the riders are what helps you to measure. The back slider, the back rider, the back beam goes by tens. So it might be kind of difficult for you to see, but there's little notches. You can hear it fall into the notch. Hear the little click as it clicks in there. So every 10, there's a little notch, and you have to make sure that your rider is clicked into one of the notches when you're measuring. The middle beam goes by hundreds, and again, it has notches. You can hear it fall into the notch. It clicks right in. And the front goes by tenths of a gram, and these are all in grams because this is science, and we always use the metric system in science. In order to use the balance, you must first find an object, and we're going to use my handy dandy stapler today. So when I put the stapler on the pan, you can see it is no longer balanced. So this arrow over here, instead of pointing at the 0, is pointing straight up. So that means we need to get it to balance. And the way we get it to balance is by moving the riders. When you're using a triple beam balance, you always want to start with the largest rider. That would be the hundreds. And we do that because it goes a lot faster to eliminate the larger numbers than to start at the bottom and try to work our way up. So what we're going to do is I'm going to move this middle rider. All right, it clicked in. It's at 100. This hasn't moved yet, so we need to try another one. All right, now it's at 200. It still is pointing at the top. All right, when I get to 300, now it's pointing down. So that tells me that the mass of my stapler is somewhere between 200 and 300 grams. So when you're using that, you want to go to the one that makes it drop down and then slide back 1. Now we're going to do the 10s. So we can move 10 at a time. Okay, we're starting to move. Oh, not quite. It's still pointing up. So we're at 50 right now on the back. And it's not quite there. 60 might be too heavy. Let's find out. All right, so now we know that the mass is somewhere between 250 and 260. So again, we're going to slide it back 1. And now we're going to move the front one, which is goes by tenths. And this one doesn't have any notches. You're just going to slowly slide it. Oop, I may have gone too far. And this is where a little bit of patience might have to come into play. All right, it's a little tiny bit low. I'm going to knock it back a tiny bit. All right, and that looks just about perfect. So now to find the total mass of the stapler, we do math. So it's time to add. So we'll start with the middle, 200. We're going to add 50. So that's 250. And then down here, it's not quite at the 1. It's about 0.9. So we would call this 250.9 grams. Make sure you don't call it 259 grams. 259 would mean this little guy would be all the way there. So it's 250.9 grams. That is the mass of our stapler. And once we finish using the balance, in most cases we'll be writing the mass down somewhere, but right now we're just practicing, so we don't have to record this. But in a real situation where you're doing this in a lab, you would probably have a data table somewhere that you would write the mass down. And then when you are done, you should always remove the object from the pan and slide the riders all the way back to 0. And that's the way that you will leave it for the next person, or that you will get it ready for your next measurement. So that is how we use a triple beam balance. And tomorrow we're going to do a lab where we really practice using these to measure, so that we know for future labs how to use it. And that is all.